This episode is brought to you by Collector Mount. Mount all your old DVD, movies, Blu-rays, and records on your wall. Sounds good, Mike.
It's not just for DVDs and movies and such. I saw you could do comics as well.
That's right. Yeah, anyone that's
The
got a...
website's actually comicmount.com.
Yeah, visit comicmount.com and enter code LATEFEE25 for 25% off your order.
You know who I can do without? I can do without the people in the video store.
Which ones?
All of them.
This is Massive Late Fee with Mike and Mark.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Massive Late Fee. My name is Mark. With me as always is Mike. How you doing, Mike?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing well. We've had a good week again. Always a good week here at Massive Late Fee. Little programming note. Today we were supposed to have the host of the Skeptical Skeptics podcast come by and talk to us about conspiracy movies. They had a family emergency. They told me about it a couple days ago, so they weren't able to come this week. So we're shifting gears a little bit, but I'm hoping I'm going to contact them this week, and I'm hoping that we can get them next week. So everything seems to be okay with them, which is good, but they were not able to come today. Another episode of Retro Late Fee dropped today. We talk about Mrs. Doubtfire, which was came out in December of '93, but there's a cool thing on Box Office Mojo where you can look up all the top movies from each week. I don't know exactly how far back it goes, but it definitely goes into '94. And at this time, Philadelphia and Mrs. Doubtfire were still number 1 and 2. A lot of people might forget, but this was back in the era where a movie, if it was a pretty big movie, like a blockbuster movie like Mrs. Doubtfire was, that it would be either number 1 or number 2 for like 12, 14, 16 weeks. That obviously doesn't happen that much anymore. But check that out, the Retro Late Fee on the same feed as you see this. We had a pretty interesting discussion about that. And Mike gets name dropped in it.
About time.
But on to the news. Not a ton of news this week, but there's a little bit. Zack Snyder, one of my least favorite directors.
Hold on. Let me get on the edge of my seat real quick.
Right?
Go.
His next movie is going to be a zombie movie for Netflix called Army of the Dead. A lot of people probably remember that I think this was his directorial debut, but he broke onto the scene with Dawn of the Dead in 2004 before going
Oh, yeah, he did do that, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or was that before 300?
Yes, I think it was. I think 300 was maybe the next year. No? Yeah, I think 300 was the next year, I think. But,
Wait, was it Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead?
Dawn of the Dead.
Was that the one with Ving Rhames? Mm-hmm. I thought it was Day of the Dead.
I think that one was the one with Ving Rhames. And it opens up where they're...
Mall?
No, they're in a neighborhood, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And then they go to the mall, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, that's a Ving Rhames one, so I don't know why I thought it was Day of the Dead.
Yeah, Dawn of the Dead is the one that takes place in the mall. Day of the Dead is kind of... The original Day of the Dead is a very weird but sort of interesting film. Zack Snyder is a terrible director. Like Mike, I'm not huge into zombie movies, and it's...
Yeah, if you listen to our Shaun of the Dead audio commentary, you'd know all about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, also I tweeted it, but worth mentioning that we did an audio commentary on Bandcamp of Dawn of the Dead. That'll be linked below as it always is. And yeah, so I'm not really looking forward to this. And it's just another thing that Netflix is throwing some money at. But it's interesting that he did all these DC movies, and now he can't. Now he's kind of forced to go to Netflix. I mean, a lot of good stuff does come to Netflix originally, but I can't imagine this is going to be one of them.
Yeah, I don't really think he's a good director. I mean, I think he was a painter before he became a director.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at like the way the movie looks. Like the movie The Watchmen looked great, but it was a terrible movie.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He has a pretty good visual aesthetic, although he overuses that bullet time effect a little bit too much, I think. But he has a pretty good visual aesthetic and a decent palette. But he doesn't know how to structure a film really, and he's not very good at uh, framing innovative shots as far as camera movement and emotion, stuff like that goes. But yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. Sticking on zombies, though, something I'm a little more looking forward to, although I'm not overjoyed about it. Zombieland 2 now has a title, Double Tap, which is a reference to the first film, Always Double Tap, and a new cast member, Rosario Dawson, Clerks 2's own Rosario Dawson.
Oh, nice. I like her.
But this one is apparently it's taking place a number of years after the original, probably 10, I would imagine, because the first one came out in 2009, and this one will come out later this year at 2019. In 2019, Woody Harrelson's coming back, Emma Stone, Abigail Breslin, and Jesse Eisenberg. The
They're
original,
like all of them, even to an extent, Woody Harrelson are like much bigger, like celebrities now. I think.
yeah, for sure. Definitely Emma Stone. Jesse Eisenberg's probably a lot more, yeah, definitely more well known than when this came out. And Abigail Breslin, she's still sort of on the indie scene, I think. She was in Little Miss Sunshine before this when she was younger. And I would say, but she's more well known now, I would say, for sure.
And Woody Harrelson kind of revitalizes, celebrity with True Detective.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was in Three Billboards. He got nominated for an Oscar for that. And yeah, he's been in a bunch of stuff since then. His career is definitely. Woody Harrelson is very good.
He's a good actor. Yeah, I don't know why it ever went away in the first place. I mean, he's really good in The People versus Larry Flint.
Yep.
He played Larry Flint.
Yeah, he was.
Norm Macdonald was one of the people.
He was such a good actor that that when Norm and him were doing a scene, Norm didn't even realize they were doing a scene.
Yeah, that was a pretty great story.
But yeah, this it's funny too. They did that 10-year challenge thing on Facebook is becoming a big thing, and kind of dumb. But they did a 10-year challenge with Zombieland. They showed the original Zombieland poster, and then they showed the new poster where they're posed pretty much the same. And obviously, Abigail Breslin has grown a lot and changed. Emma Stone definitely looks a little older. Jesse Eisenberg looks a little older. And Woody Harrelson looks exactly the same. That guy does not age.
It's like a very strict diet. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Yeah, in the original movie, he was looking for Twinkies, and they find snow cones at one point, which he does eat, but he's like, he says, "Oh, it's not the same," and I don't know how maybe they made them themselves, or they had to. Yeah, I think they had to make them themselves, but they had to make vegan snow cones for Woody Harrelson because he doesn't. He's a strict vegan, I guess.
Oh, at one point he had a even more strict diet. He was like a raw diet where he wouldn't eat anything cooked. I don't know if he's still doing that or if he's upped it to cooked to veganism now. But yeah, he has a very strict diet for what I.
Yeah. Yeah, he's big on that, but he's in great shape and he doesn't age, so maybe he is onto something.
Yeah, could be. I like the. Did you ever see the movie Ted?
The with the Seth
The teddy bear one?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a funny part where they were talking about watching Ted dance scenes of Cheers.
Yeah.
That's a pretty funny part.
So the last bit of news that I have today is Ryan Reynolds with Fox, or with Disney acquiring Fox and Deadpool and stuff. Deadpool 3 is sort of up in the air. He's confident that they will make it, but he's definitely keeping busy. There are two movies that he is starring in. I believe they both come out next year, I think. One's an action comedy called Shotgun Wedding, which apparently is about a like a hitman kind of guy who's settling down and getting married, I guess, from what I can gather from it. And the other one seems somewhat interesting. It's at least an original idea, or somewhat original idea, I guess. When you hear it, you'll know exactly what it's like.
Two guys and a girl in a pizza place.
No.
The movie.
Wednesdays nights on ABC. That's a Clerks the Animated Series reference.
Just listen to every podcast we've ever done and you'll get that.
Right? But no, he's going to be in a movie called Free Guy, or Free Guy, I guess. He plays a character named Guy who learns that he is a background character in a violent open world video game, sort of like Grand Theft Auto 5. And he learns that their world is going to be shut down because it's going to be replaced by a sequel. And so he tries to save the world by convincing everyone else that they're actually living in a video game and starting a revolution. This, with any high concept idea like this has the chance to be really good or really terrible. It's rare that any high concept idea falls in the middle where it's just okay or just mediocre.
Yeah, The Matrix on paper, it could go either way, especially when you say starring Keanu Reeves.
Right. But
and it's a great example of a great high concept movie, the first one.
Yeah. But this reminds me a little bit of The Truman Show, obviously, where, somebody discovers that the world they knew is a fiction. And a little bit of Wreck-It Ralph, I guess, because in that one they were trying to prevent themselves from getting deleted when their video game got reset. But, I do like that it's an original, a somewhat original concept anyway. And it's an interesting idea. I could see a lot of room for humor in, like a background character in Grand Theft Auto, basically, and all the things that could go on there. So, we'll have to see how that goes. But those are the two films that he's looking to do. So that is the news for this week. I think we covered a lot of the news last week, and not much else has happened this week.
Nope, nothing happened.
But they did. They had the Screen Actors Guild Award. I like award shows a lot, but I don't even watch this one, so I didn't read about it. I didn't look it up, and I didn't watch it, so I can't tell you who won, and I don't really care.
I think I heard that Black Panther movie won Best Picture.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I heard. I don't know. I didn't actually watch it, but I heard it from someone or on TV or on the radio. I don't remember.
Interesting. That bodes well for the Oscars for them, I suppose. I don't think that movie it's a fine movie, and like I said, socially important in certain ways. But as far as just the art of making a movie, it does not deserve to win Best Picture. But we'll see what happens.
There's not even any fish fuckery in this one.
God, I fucking hate that movie so much. I mean, The Shape of Water is a decent movie, but I like it. There are good things about it. Guillermo del Toro is very good at kind of like Zack Snyder. He's very good with aesthetics. The shots are beautiful. The cinematography is great. There are lots of good things about it from a technical standpoint, but from the plot standpoint, it is awful. And I just hate it so much because it does not fucking deserve Best Picture.
Is that the movie you went to where you had the knife, you just kept cutting your hand as you watched it?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, it looked interesting. I wanted to go see it in the theater, but then it was on I never did, and it was on like HBO, and I turned it on. It was right at that fish fuck scene. I'm like, yeah, I don't think I can really get into this movie. I kind of have to be seduced to this point, I think. My disbelief is yet to be suspended.
Yeah, and that's the problem is that they don't really build to it. Not in any kind of satisfying way. She's like friends with the thing. They never talk at all. And they communicate via sign language or whatever. I can't even remember. Basically, like hand motions and stuff. Um and they just seem like they're friends, and then all of a sudden he's in her bathroom and they're having sex. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was odd. And also, I don't feel that the bathroom would fill up entirely like that, like in a cartoon.
No. Yeah, exactly.
So again, that's definitely not the moment you want to come into that movie yet.
No. But so moving on to what we're watching today, today I watched, I think you watched it last night. We watched that new movie on Netflix called Polar. It's an assassin movie. It's not good.
Yeah, there's only one thing about the entire movie that I liked, and it was Johnny Knoxville at the beginning. It's
Yeah.
always fun to see him show up. But then, like when he gets killed, I'm like, oh my god, you wasted Johnny Knoxville. You had him in the movie, and he's already out of the movie.
Yeah.
Like when they were doing the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I guess Harrison Ford or someone had asked Sean Connery to appear in it.
Hmm.
And he said, "Well, yeah, but they only wanted to be there at the beginning of the movie, like as like a cameo." And he said, "Well, if I showed up, you'd want me to the audience would just want me to come along the whole movie, which I'm not doing."
Right.
And that's kind of what happened in this movie. I'm like, "Oh, good, Johnny Knoxville." I'm like, "Oh, wait, he's the victim," and then no more Johnny Knoxville, and that was like the best character in the movie, kind of, because he was just kind of like fun. And then the whole movie I felt was very mixed. Like they couldn't decide if they were being serious or just like completely like cartoonish at certain points.
Yep, absolutely. It was the tone was horrible because it was all over the place. Anytime they went and they showed the Mr. Blute, the leader of this organization, I was reminded of like a bad Austin Powers villain, like Goldmember or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. And it was so cartoonish and so ridiculous. But any scene with Mads Mikkelsen in it, which is most of the movie, is dour and
Yeah.
very serious.
There's like a wacky group of happy-go-lucky like assassins who just goes around killing people just because they live in a place rented out by this guy, which makes no sense.
Yeah, yeah, that was another thing that was weird. He owns 4 properties. He only lives at one, but I guess he visits all of them, and he rents out at least 2 of them, and then the other one, and one seemed to be a trailer, like a trailer
Yeah,
to trailer park.
yeah, I don't know.
And then the other one was just broken into by people smoking pot or whatever, I guess.
Something. Yeah, I don't really know what it was. This movie, I tuned out quite a bit during large portions of it.
And there's no reason for them to kill those people either, by the way.
No, there's no reason at all. It literally makes no sense. And then there's just big parts of the movie are just very odd. Like I was watching it in here because we were going to have that be the main review topic of the show today. But I immediately realized it was a bad movie, and how long it took you to realize that?
I think when I saw the CGI bird, the completely unnecessary CGI bird that looked horrible fly by the camera, and within the first 5 seconds of the movie, I was like, "Oh no!"
But I often watch things in the garage because it's quieter, and I smoke sometimes. But I was watching it, and then there's a sex scene in the movie that's like, I swear it's like a 5 minute long sex scene.
Oh yeah, very very long, very unnecessary.
Yeah. And then at that's the exact moment my wife came out to tell me something, and I can tell like as she's talking to me, that she's kind of hearing what I'm listening to. She's like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a Netflix thing." I'm like, "Okay, this will stop any second now." It did not.
That is hilarious.
It sounded no different. I mean, I could see why she would. I don't know. I think I'd just be staring at the screen.
Oh my god.
Kind of uncomfortable.
Oh my god, that is hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just a weird. I don't know.
Mads Mikkelsen is in it. I've liked Mads Mikkelsen in some other things that he's done.
He was good in the show Hannibal.
Yeah, exactly. Vanessa Hudgens. I'm not super familiar with her. I think she was on that Disney movie way back when, and she's probably done some other things.
It wasn't that another odd thing. Wasn't she? Wasn't she supposed to be playing like a teenager or something like that?
I think so. Like,
I and it was just, and she was just clearly not like a teenager, but I think she was like underage or something weird like that. They like made it a point to say that she was underage.
mm-hmm.
Like this movie just took so many like different ideas from other movies and just used none of them in a good or useful or inventive way. There's like literally nothing that's original about this movie.
Yeah, the other time that I got a little worried at the beginning of the movie again as well was when I saw that it was produced in association with Dark Horse Comics. And I said, oh, I had heard this was based on a comic book or a graphic novel. It's a Dark Horse original. And I was like, oh no.
But I think it is based off a comic, actually.
Yeah, and I think it's a Dark Horse original. No, I think it's a Dark Horse original comic.
Oh, I see. I thought you were saying that maybe the movie was just like purely original and not based on a comic. You didn't realize it was a comic or something.
And I mean, nothing against Dark Horse. Dark Horse has done. Dark Horse did Archie versus the Predator. They've done some good stuff.
Nothing against them except for their entire body of work, but
Right. But a lot of their original stuff, where they don't, where they're not using IP that they've purchased from other things like Archie and the Predator. A lot of their original stuff tends to not be that great. But I mean, this movie is an assassin movie. Based. I mean, it's there. I mean, there's a lot of this genre out there, and it's a very generic-y one, except for the few like very silly elements of it. But the silly elements of it don't mesh well with the rest of it. And Richard Dreyfuss is in it for like
yeah,
like
that was
5 minutes for no
yeah,
reason.
that was a thing he probably shot in an hour for a hefty paycheck, I would think.
Yeah, and I mean, and he's good. Richard Dreyfuss still can act, that's for sure.
Yeah,
But
I haven't seen him in anything for a while, but this movie.
right,
I'm coming out of retirement for Poland.
yeah. But they show that Matt Lucas plays that guy Blut, and they show a picture of his dad, which is just clearly Matt Lucas, like a painting of Matt Lucas with long hair, and it's like that kind of stuff. It's like an Austin Powers movie. That's the total vibe that I got from it. It's very violent. There's a lot of stuff like that, and yeah, I was super disappointed with the Johnny Knoxville thing too, because Johnny Knoxville is the kind of guy that could elevate a movie like this,
Yeah,
where they could have made a, like, if Johnny Knoxville had replaced Mads Mikkelsen's character, not then, like I said, I like Mads Mikkelsen, I just don't think him and his acting style and the way he wrote his character fits with the tone of this. But if it was Johnny Knoxville being like kind of crazy and off the wall, like the villains were, then I think it could have worked a lot better.
yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
But yeah, Johnny Knoxville was great at the beginning of the movie, and yeah, there were a couple things here and there. There were some interesting things in the movie, but for the most part, yeah, the tone was just all over the place. I didn't.
It's like each person, a different person wrote each scene as if that's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
awful.
exactly. And it almost felt like a video game at certain points where it was like, okay, Mads Mikkelsen goes here and he kills this guy, and then okay, so now he's moving on to this scene, and it didn't
Right.
feel so it did the scenes didn't feel super cohesive. They more felt like, oh, we're going from one to the other. Like I can almost see the storyboard as the movie went along.
Right.
But yeah, so I was, it's one of those that Netflix is pushing, where it's like, oh, Netflix recommends, or this is trending on Netflix or whatever.
Right.
So I figured, we could check it out. But yeah, it's, oh man, it's not very good.
No, it's not.
And I didn't know anything about it when I suggested that we watch it. I had just seen it pop up, and this is not my favorite genre of film anyway.
Oh,
So
I love assassin movies, but I don't know, it just was a bad take on so many different, tropes of that genre.
yeah, and that's the thing is anything that they didn't steal, not necessarily steal, but anything that wasn't cliche, that wasn't kind of generic from other assassin movies, just didn't fit at all with with the movie. And if they had, like I said, if they had decided, okay, no Mads Mikkelsen's character, we'll have Johnny Knoxville's character be the main character that they're trying to kill, and the plot could have stayed pretty much the same for their reasons for killing him and everything. Everything else could have stayed pretty much the same, but the whole tone would have changed. They could have put some more jokes in and stuff, and it could have been like, "Hey, yeah, it's an assassin movie, but it's different. It's a different take on it because it's more kind of like wacky and madcap or whatever adjective you want to use for it." I think that would have worked better. But yeah, have you been watching anything else, Mike? Any other things you
Uh,
want to mention?
yeah, on the recommendation of my wife, who thought I was watching a porno the other day, I watched the Fire Festival documentary on.
The Netflix one or the Hulu one?
Oh yeah, the Netflix one. I know there's
Okay.
two versions, and I think we even talked about. You said that one was the Hulu one was moved up ahead of the Netflix one just to spite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very interesting story. I had heard a little bits and pieces about the Fire Festival a couple years ago, I guess it was.
Hmm.
I never really followed it very closely. And I'm like, but I mean, I heard it was good, and it was kind of interesting. Like one of the things, like, yeah, I'd like to know more about that. And it was, pretty educational, and the guy was just kind of like a psycho at the end.
Yeah, that's yeah, I've been seeing, it's been popping up on my Netflix thing and I've been thinking about watching it as well. I'll probably give it a watch at some point. I was playing catch up a little bit here for the podcast, watching the stuff that we were going to talk about today, so I didn't really have time to watch a lot of stuff. I watched what else did I watch? I've continued to watch House. Have I watched anything new that I haven't talked about?
I
Oh, I watched, my wife and I caught up. We were like 3 episodes behind. I caught up on a sitcom starring Jenna Fisher from The Office and, oh, what is his name? It's Goldie Hawn's son. Um, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but they're in a show called Splitting Up Together, which is based on a German show actually
huh.
about a couple that gets divorced but decides to continue living together. And what they do is he stays in the guest house on their property 1 week, and she stays in the main house, and then the next week they switch. So it's like each week they have the kids, but they're also still right there and still in each other's lives. What's
Ugh.
that girl that was in 10 How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days? What's her name?
Oh, I have no idea.
Dang it, because it's Goldie Hawn's daughter and their
Oh
brother.
wait, Kate Hudson.
Yes, Oliver Hudson.
Okay,
That's his name. I knew if I remembered the last name, I'd get it. Oliver Hudson's his name. They're brother and
sure.
sister. But and he was on a show called
Rock Hudson's kids.
Right, exactly. He was on a show called Last Man Standing, so both of them are familiar with the sitcom territory. They're both really good. The kids that are in the show are really good as well, and because they have 3 children in the show, and there's they've got Bobby Lee is one of his friends, and yeah, Bobby Lee's very funny in the show.
Bobby Lee's funny in general. He's got a podcast that's really good.
But yeah, so they've got a good supporting cast as well, and it's a very funny show. So we caught up on that. It's one of those where it's not going to blow you away. It's not hilarious. It's nothing necessarily new. It's a good old-fashioned sitcom, basically. I mean, the concept is somewhat new. I've never seen a show before where two people got divorced and decide to live together, and there's all this still sexual tension and stuff between the two of them. But yeah, it's just a good old fashioned sitcom. But it's solid.
Nice. I'm
But
not gonna watch it, but nice.
no, I know you're not gonna watch it. But yeah. So this week our main topic is the Ted Bundy tapes on Netflix, and he was a serial killer, obviously. And also, I mean, it's in what you're watching, but it's sort of a main topic too. The movie Polar, which, he's an assassin, but he could also be sort of typified as a serial killer. So I figured for educating Mike, I would find a serial killer story that we could talk about. And I found one in the 1992 film Dr. Giggles.
Oh, I've seen that movie.
Yeah, I think we saw it together, I believe. I remember seeing it quite a while ago. It was directed by Manny Coto, who, if you're a fan of the Star Trek franchise
Nope.
to such a degree that you know the writers, he was a writer on Star Trek Enterprise and later a writer on the television show 24. And he did some Tales from the Crypt stuff like that as well. But yeah, he definitely made more of a name for himself as a writer than as a director. But this plot summary is pretty good. So in the town, and it stars what's his name, Larry Drake, who people might remember during this time too. Played Lenny, the mentally handicapped assistant on the NBC television show L.A. Law.
Huh? Never saw that.
Yeah. So, in the town of Moorhigh in 1957, the patients of Dr. Evan Randall kept disappearing. After some investigation, the citizens of Moorhigh found that he and his son Evan Jr., nicknamed Dr. Giggles for his hideous laugh, and I'm sure that there are people out there that are now saying, "Oh, we should nickname Mark Dr. Giggles," because I have a similar sort of laugh.
See, I don't know why I thought he was a dentist for some reason.
Yeah, I get these two confused too, and I think part of it for me, I think, is the LA Law connection, because there's also a horror movie that came out in 1996 called The Dentist, and that stars Corbin Burnson, who was also on LA Law.
Oh, I never watched LA Law, but for some reason I don't know why I always thought the character was a dentist. Like, and then even after I see it and realize he's not, it just seems like the name alone makes me think of a dentist for some reason.
Yeah, yeah,
This
laughing
movie was
gas.
released on my 12th birthday.
That's right. Yep.
Thank you, Manny Coto.
But anyway, so they found out that he and his son were ripping out patients' hearts in an attempt to bring back the doctor's dead wife. Which, I guess, sort of like Frankenstein, but
It's kind of romantic in a way.
yeah. But scientifically, I don't understand how this works at all if she's already dead, because her brain is dead. But
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you a doctor, Mark?
no, unfortunately not.
Oh,
But the townspeople stoned Dr. Randall to death. But Evan Jr. disappeared. So it's 57, but they're going really Shirley Jackson old school on this guy.
it's a poor town. Okay.
35 years later, Dr. Giggles escapes from a mental asylum. No word, no indication as to how he was put in a mental asylum, because they just said he disappeared, so he escaped this, but then also still found his way into a mental asylum, killing everyone in his path. In Moorhigh, 19-year-old Jennifer Campbell, her boyfriend Max Anderson, and their friends are planning their summer break. Jennifer, upset that her father is dating again shortly after her mother's death, is further angered when she is diagnosed with a heart condition and is forced to wear a heart monitor to determine if she needs surgery. Angered seems like a weird reaction to finding out you have a heart problem and have to wear a heart monitor, but I guess she's an angry teenager.
I guess.
Meanwhile, Dr. Giggles breaks into his father's abandoned office. They killed him 35 years ago. How, isn't property worth something in this town? They just leave the office abandoned for 35 years.
Well, they were pissed off enough at this guy to kill him with rocks. What do you think they're going to do? Move on as a real estate right away?
They were playing the long game. But so he breaks into his father's abandoned office and starts going through the doctor's old files, gathering a list of names. He begins to stalk and kill several of the town's residents, including Jennifer's friends. They don't explain why. I would think that he was going to get a list of the people who killed his dad and to get revenge on them. But Jennifer's friends, I assume, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, probably 2000, probably 27 years. But her friends are also 19, so would not have been a part of the murder party.
Makes a lot of sense.
Maybe he should go to the quarry and destroy that, since that's where they got all the rocks. But Jennifer comes home from a party.
Punch out the rock biter.
Jennifer comes home from a party and, deciding that she's had enough of her heart monitor, dumps it in a fish tank. I mean, that test is not going to be usable now. She's just going to have to get it again.
She's just going to get angry again.
Right. Jennifer's father finds her heart monitor and goes to look for her, leaving his girlfriend Tamara behind to also be killed by Dr. Giggles. It makes it sound like he did that on purpose. He left her behind to be killed by Dr. Giggles. Here, you wait here, Tamara. Dr. Giggles will be right in. Jennifer returns to the party and sees Max kissing another girl. Distraught, she runs into a house of mirrors. As you do when you're upset.
So she's distraught by this, but angry by the. Should it be the opposite?
Yeah, no kidding.
Do you think there's like a slight a mix-up in the writer's room? Did you say distraught or angry here? I remember it was in alphabetical order.
Yeah, they had done so much cocaine in the writers' room that they couldn't tell the difference between emotions anymore.
And they called cocaine Dr. Giggles, so when they had to come up with a title for the movie, like, oh, why don't we just call it Dr. Giggles?
Dr. Giggles sees Jennifer and notices that she has the same heart condition as his mother and goes after her. How? Like,
what?
Was there a twitch in her hand? And he was like, "Oh, that can only happen if you have this specific heart condition."
Is he even a doctor at all? Isn't he the son?
Yeah, he was the son, and I think.
So he went to medical school while he's on the lam for all these years.
Yeah, while he was in the mental institution.
Oh, I'm doing a correspondence course in medicine.
Oh my god!
While they're trying to see whether or not I'll kill again.
He follows and kills the other girl Max was kissing, but Jennifer sees him coming and manages to escape. Officers Magruder, and that always reminds me of MacGruber. And
always, so every time you watch Dr. Giggles?
Yeah, the one time that I watched it before MacGruber was even a thing.
That was too much, probably.
Oh. Officers MacGruber and Ritz find her and take her to the police station. Through a flashback, Officer MacGruber explains to Ritz that he knows how Evan Jr. escaped the night that Dr. Randall was killed. He was in the morgue where the bodies of Dr. Randall and his dead wife were. He noticed the dead wife's body moving and then witnessed Evan Jr. cutting his way out of her with a scalpel. He realized that Evan Jr. escaped by cutting open his mother's corpse and sewing it shut with him in it. That experience has left Officer MacGruber an alcoholic and an insomniac.
What?
Yeah, I don't... So he tauntauned his way inside his mom. But anyway.
He was cold. The Force can't warm you up.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't understand how that works. Even, let's say, like I said, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, but judging by the age of the actor when this movie came out, and it was 35 years after this, let's say that he was like 10 or younger, even like 5.
I think he was like 10 in the movie. I don't know why.
That's too big. There are organs in there and stuff. You know, I mean, like, could you hide inside of a body bigger than you if it was completely hollowed out? Maybe, but not with all the stuff that's in it. But anyway, so Dr. Giggles makes his way to Jennifer's house and attacks her father. Officer MacGruber goes to investigate Jennifer's house and finds her father there, lying in a pool of blood. Dr. Giggles mortally wounds MacGruber, who, recognizing him as Evan Jr., angrily shoots him in the side before dying. Wrights arrives soon after, finding his partner dead.
Angrily.
Yeah. finding his partner dead and Jennifer's father wounded but alive. Meanwhile, Dr. Giggles returns to his hideout, performing surgery on himself to remove the bullet. Yeah, apparently he does somehow know all this medical stuff. He learned everything he needed to know about being a doctor from his dad in the 10 years that his dad was alive with him.
Right.
He then kidnaps Jennifer and tells her that he plans to replace her broken heart with one of those he took from the bodies of her friends. Wrights and Max arrive to save her. Wrights puts up enough of a fight with Dr. Giggles that Max and Jennifer manage to escape. Dr. Giggles manages to kill Wrights, but is unable to escape before his father's house explodes, apparently killing him. I don't know why it exploded, but
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
houses just randomly explode. Jennifer is taken to the hospital where she is told that the traumatic events of the evening have damaged one of her heart valves and she is going to need surgery to replace it. While she is and by the way, I mean, okay, yeah, I guess it was 35 years ago, so it might not have been as easy to do that, but like heart valve replacement surgery, while dangerous, is definitely something that's done all the time. And they have artificial valves. They have pig heart valves that they do it with. So, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But while she is being prepped, Dr. Giggles reappears, having survived the explosion, and is cutting a bloody path through the hospital staff to get to Jennifer. He chases her to a janitor's closet where she spills a bottle of cleaning fluid onto the floor and hits him with a pair of defibrillator paddles, electrocuting him. She finally kills him by stabbing him through the chest with two of his own instruments. Dr. Giggles then breaks the fourth wall, staring at the camera, asking, "Is there a doctor in the house?" before dying. What a way to end your mostly serious horror film.
I think I need to watch the ending now.
Recovering in the hospital, Jennifer is visited by Max and her also recovering father. And that's the little denouement, I guess. The coda on that shit sandwich. But yeah, that is Dr. Giggles. Not a good film from my memory.
Hey, I know probably he doesn't say, but do you know if he shrugged when he said, "Is there a doctor in the house?"
I think, if I remember correctly, I think he turns, it's like full frame on his face, and just in a really bad acting moment, but trying to be earnest, he says, "Is there a doctor in the house?" before it like cuts away or whatever.
Nice.
But our main topic today is about the Netflix documentary, The Bundy Tapes, or the Ted Bundy Tapes on Netflix. And it's a 4-part documentary on Ted Bundy's life and crimes. The framing story is the tapes that these two journalists got from him, mostly one guy, in a series of interviews shortly before his death in the electric chair in Florida. And that's, like I say, that's kind of the framing device, because it really is, there are hundreds and hundreds of hours of these tapes, and you don't really hear a lot of it. You hear a little bit, you hear enough to sort of narrate and frame the story, but it's a straight documentary about the victims, his life, his path of crime, and then his end, obviously. So, Mike, what did you think of the Ted Bundy tapes?
Actually, I don't know if it was even like anyone had advertised before it came out. I just like had Netflix on and suddenly it was on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, that's it. How they suggest their main things they're pushing or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I just happened to have the day off, and so my wife and I I think we watched all of them. I don't think we watched them all in a row because it was like earlier in the morning, but not enough time to do that and do the other things we had to do.
Right.
But we watched them all on the same day.
Okay.
I thought they were interesting. It was kind of weird because I used to read quite a bit about like murder and that kind of stuff when I was younger. I just lost interest, And I had always like read stuff, about Ted Bundy and that sort of thing. I'd never actually heard his voice or anything like that before, which is kind of weird because the entire thing is based off these voice recordings that this reporter I think did.
Yep.
I can't remember exactly why he was given permission or why he let him do that, but he basically recorded him, and it's actually kind of interesting. I don't know if you ever read the book If I Did It, the O.J. Simpson book written by O.J. Simpson.
Yeah, I did actually.
But in the OJ book, he basically kind of comes up with like a character, and he uses the character to describe how he's, allegedly committed the murders, and
Mhm.
that's essentially the same thing that happens in the Ted Bundy thing. The reporter kind of suggests like, "Oh, how do you think it might have happened?" Rather than him implicating himself. I believe he was trying to appeal his like sentence and get out of it until like his very last day, like the day before he was killed. He offered to like provide more details of murders and stuff. And they're like, at this point, he's exhausted all his appeals, so they just executed him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's right that I know he was still under the appeal process when they met. I think they met because ostensibly, I believe Ted Bundy wanted to tell his life story. It seems like, and this is a big theme in the documentary, that he really liked the attention and wanted to be famous, wanted to be well known, wanted to be the center of attention, and he really didn't want to implicate himself in the murders or even necessarily take credit for the murders. So yeah, like a lot of the first part is him, the reporter, talking about how frustrating it was that he couldn't get him to comment on these different women, the first ones that they knew of starting in Washington, where he lived, and that he came up with that idea of him being able to talk about it in the third person, and then he could get more detail, and obviously he does. It's funny, like you talk about how you used to read about serial killers and stuff, which obviously is something that a lot of people do. I've written I've written 3 books on a specific serial killer. I did a lot of research on different serial killers to kind of understand a little bit better the psychology, so I knew how to write it a little bit better. Although I did not really ever read about Ted Bundy very much, and it didn't have much familiarity with Ted Bundy's case. So a lot of the things in this documentary were like sort of revelations to me. They were things that I didn't really know. And so that was definitely interesting. But yeah, a lot of people seem intrigued by reading about serial killers, and I think one of the reasons is because of how bizarre it is. Like, I think there are different reasons different people read about it. I think some people kind of look for answers. Some people are just fascinated by the oddity of the whole thing of a person that could think so differently than most of the rest of us do. And so I think there's different, but they're anomalies. Serial killers are anomalies in society, and I think that's that's kind of one of the things that draws people in to these kind of stories, is just how different and strange serial killers and their psychology can be. And they point out in the documentary, and I think it's definitely true, that Ted Bundy was scarier for a lot of people than other serial killers in certain ways, because he was so normal. Like he obviously in his thought he expressed that difference and that oddity, but in his outward appearance and his demeanor, he really didn't. Like John Wayne Gacy, he looks like a creep. Charles Manson, he's got that wild look in his eye. He carves a swastika in his forehead and things like that. And he, it's like, oh, there he is. It's like the mustache twirling villain almost. Not quite exactly to that degree, but that's what a lot of serial killers looked like in this era. And even David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, he looks like a regular New York guy, I guess, but he was a loner. He stayed in his apartment unless he was out killing people. He was caught, David Berkowitz was caught because of a parking ticket, and when the police called the dispatcher at the local precinct by where he lived, she said, "Oh, David Berkowitz, I know that guy. He's really weird." And like she immediately thought like, "Oh, everyone that knows him thinks he's a really weird guy." And so that was kind of the what the public understood as far as serial killers went, is that you can pick them out kind of thing, or at least they'd fooled themselves into thinking that. But with Ted Bundy, it was completely different, and they play that up a little bit, especially in the first episode of the first episode of the documentary, where they I think which I think is called what is it called? Handsome Devil, where they talk about how normal he was, how articulate he was, and things like that. And I think that's one thing that really freaked people out about Ted Bundy.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is there really weren't a lot of books about Ted Bundy when I was into reading those types of books.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was oddly enough by the true crime writer Anne Rule.
Okay.
She had volunteered at a rape crisis center back in Washington in like the late 70s, early 80s, and he actually worked with her at the crisis.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, of all the people to have known him, and she talked about it a little bit, but and then there's another book that was called River, like the Search for the Green River Killer.
Yeah.
I think, and then it was about this detective Robert Keppel. He's actually in this quite a bit. He has very large eyes. You'll recognize him if you see him.
Yep. I remember.
Yeah, those were basically only two books, and like you said, they're always people always give off this mystique and that sort of thing about him. But what I found interesting is when they did kind of play that up in the first episode. The more the episodes went on, you realize that this was all never a movie. People describe how he was kind of an odd person.
Mm-hmm.
He looks he looks and acts how you're supposed to, but there's something off about him.
Yeah, for sure. And when you see him in interviews, you kind of get that impression, that smile, like the smirk that he had. It's not like a warm kind of thing. It's not. It looks off. It doesn't look right. You can see there's kind of something behind his eyes, and a lot of people, the reporter and some other people talk about his eyes and his hands a lot in this documentary, and how his eyes go black when he's talking about the killings and things like that. But another thing that I found fairly interesting is they, at one point, I believe it's in the last episode where they're talking about his trials and everything, they talk to a lot of his defense counsel, and they seem to sort of want to put a little seed of doubt in your mind as to whether or not he actually committed these crimes. They bring up the stuff that at that, what was it called, Sematary beach or whatever it was, that beach where where the two women went missing. How the eyewitnesses, they said definitively, the three of the four said definitively that this guy Ted Bundy wasn't the guy. Didn't look like him. And then they bring up some different things about lack of physical evidence and things like that in the last episode. But I just think about it, and I know that there was a lot of killing and stuff going on in the 70s and everything. There was a lot more crime in the 70s than there is now. But I think about, man, he'd have to be the most unlucky person in the world if he didn't do it. Because every single place he went while he was there were a series of teenage women who all had dark hair, who all looked similar, that disappeared and were later found killed by similar means, left in mountainous areas in the woods, besides the Florida, besides the Chai Omega House one, where he obviously, I don't know, felt a compulsion or something like that. But man, he'd have to be so unlucky, because it starts in Washington and then it's in Utah when he's in Utah. And by the way, there are no more disappearances or murders in Washington when he's not there anymore. Then it goes to Colorado when he's in Colorado. Then it's in Florida when he's in Florida. And I mean, he did, confess towards the end of his life, and they show that. And it's one of those things where, I've heard people that still defend him say that, oh, he was doing that because he was trying to get his the death penalty commuted and everything. It's funny too. Another thing about the death penalty, because I've actually, coincidentally, before we even talked about doing this, I'd been reading about the death penalty for some reason, just out of curiosity, I suppose.
Yeah, curiosity.
But they said that one of the guys said when he was arrested in 1975, I believe it was, in Colorado, that he was going to get tried for murder. This was before his first escape attempt, and that that would carry the death penalty as a penalty with it, which is true and untrue in certain ways, because in 1972, in Furman v. Georgia, the United States Supreme Court, in a 7-2 decision, ruled that capital punishment was, violated the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution, and their reasoning was basically that there wasn't a standard. There wasn't a standard for who would be put to death and who wouldn't be. There was no uniform standard, and they were concerned that it was being carried out in prejudicial ways. More minorities, more people with mental illness or mental handicaps were being put to death than white men or women. But obviously not a lot of women get put to death. But so that was their argument, and they the states, they went and ratified laws to satisfy the Supreme Court's need for a uniform standard. And by 1976, in Gregg versus Georgia, the Supreme Court said that now that standards had been put in place, that capital punishment was once again legal. So obviously in 1975, it was still under Furman versus Georgia, but Colorado in 1974 did reenact the death penalty with a set of standards, and one of them was committing a murder in the act of a felony, and kidnapping being a felony, and being one of the felonies actually laid out in their statute. So he would have been eligible for the death penalty, but again, another little wrinkle: the state of Colorado has only put one person to death since 1974, since the reinstatement of the death penalty, and that was in 1997. Now, would they have put him to death? It's possible. It's possible not. I don't know, because if that trial had been allowed to go forward, they may have only convicted him on the one murder, and not really searched for any other murders that he may have caused. So, I mean, he may not have been put to death. He may have got his life imprisonment in Colorado if he had never escaped. I don't know, but I thought that was sort of interesting, that part of it as well.
See, I thought what you were going to say was this thing that I had read somewhere. I don't remember where exactly, but supposedly when he was, in the process of being convicted in Colorado, like he had asked someone where he'd be most likely to be executed, and they said that it would be the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And someone kind of tried to connect that together, saying that's why he went to Florida, because he wanted to be caught and executed, which I don't necessarily buy that.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that either.
Because I'd also heard at one point that he actually had decided between Florida and Michigan, but the weather was better in Florida, so that's why he went there instead. Like U of M, he wanted to be in a college town.
Right. Yeah, and he actually did come to Ann Arbor for a little bit and watched in a bar the Rose Bowl game between Washington and U of M that year. But Michigan, as those of you that live in the state where we live know, we don't have the death penalty, and I don't know that I don't think we've ever had the death penalty, at least
I don't think
not
we
in
ever
modern
have.
times.
No.
But yeah, so obviously he would not have gotten the death penalty here, but he still would have been eligible for it in Colorado. I mean,
Yeah.
they would have let's say he never went to Florida. He killed some people in Michigan and then got caught. They would have extradited him. They would have found him guilty in Michigan. They would have found him guilty in Washington, and then they would have taken him to Colorado last because they would have put him wherever he could have gotten the death penalty. At least that's what I think.
So what I think is kind of interesting is technically all these murders are also kidnappings.
Yeah,
And the FBI has jurisdiction over kidnappings. I don't know why the FBI doesn't invoke their jurisdiction more.
yeah, I agree.
Because anytime anyone's kidnapping, they just kind of assume, or at least they are allowed to assume, they're taken out. I mean, maybe they're not as likely to, give the death penalty. Maybe states are weary that the federals will get the credit. I don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah, the FBI, especially in this time period, the FBI didn't exert their authority in these kind of criminal cases very often. The FBI really more focused on the mafia and like international drug cartels, things like that. They didn't really focus as much um on these kind of cases, like not unless they were like high profile kidnappings or something like that. But garden variety kidnappings, they really didn't exert their jurisdiction there. And once he kills across state lines, and they point that out, that the FBI sort of got involved, but they didn't even have a task force for serial killers at this point. But yeah, like once he kills across state lines, he's technically an interstate criminal at that point and subject to FBI's jurisdiction.
Yeah, I think the issue might be is I don't know if there's a felony murder equivalent, or if you could even be charged with a capital crime. I don't think kidnapping is a capital crime. I'm not really sure though.
No, it's a federal crime.
I don't know federal, but I don't know if they can if the federal government can execute you for kidnapping.
I don't think they can execute you for kidnapping, but it's definitely. I mean, there's definitely a some standard penalty
And
for it.
because generally like murder is like a state issue unless it's like certain protected, like if it's a
Yeah,
federal agent,
right.
that sort of thing. So it's, I mean, in some states like Florida, like if they don't have a anything on the books for murder, or like a equivalent of felony murder, then maybe they just couldn't possibly execute you for that crime.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So maybe they could, they, especially at the time, since a big part of the movie, and it was a very unfortunately accurate part, was just how unconnected all the different agencies were. Like in the state of like Washington alone, like they didn't even know how many people were murdered, or who, they didn't know that they all looked similar. They didn't piece any of the information together until it was like way too late.
Yeah, it's sort of dark comedy, but it reminds me of a John Mulaney joke where he talks about how easy it was to get away with murder or something like that, back before DNA and things like that. And he's like, it's like two guys at a crime scene. It's like, sir, we found a bucket of the killer's blood in the corner here. Gross. Now back to my hunch.
Right, right.
And it's like, obviously it wasn't quite that bad, but it really was, especially in those times, and like you said, without the coordination. See, one of the things that Ted Bundy's crimes did that was good, I suppose, for law enforcement, is really force them to work together. And now there's an interstate database of like different serial killers or suspected serial killers, or profiles of violent killers. Anytime there's any kind of like killing patterns that come up in each state, it gets put into this central database, and any law enforcement officer from a different state can type in like basic criteria, kills these this type of people in this way or whatever, and can see similar cases from different states to see if there's any kind of link between different people killing across state lines. But I mean, in the 70s, obviously serial killers had been around for a while. I mean, Jack the Ripper, and even way before that, as anomalies here and there. Ed Gein in the, I think that was the 20s or the 30s in
30s, I
in
think.
Wisconsin. And then there were ones here and there, but it didn't really get to be high profile. For some reason, there seemed to be a rash of them in the 70s and early
See,
80s.
I think that's just a matter of more information being available and more people connecting certain crimes to one individual. I
Yeah,
mean,
it could be, yeah.
there would be no reason for it to be less, just like how certain, like, like syndromes and that sort of thing are more easily diagnosed or have broader criteria now, so we're more aware of them. It doesn't mean they're necessarily occurring more often.
Right. And like, I mean, if you go back to the Old West, a lot of those gunfighters, even the law people who were sanctioned to do it, a lot of those people were just mass murderers too. You know,
And
in a slightly different way, but they killed a bunch of people.
it could also be another issue of like population getting to a point where people are crowded so much that someone can kill and get away with it so easily that they are able to take out quite a few victims.
Yeah, and this is something that I hadn't considered until you brought that up just now. But it also increases the number or the potential number of mentally deranged people who would do something like this. If you have a population of 100 people and it's 10% that are born with this kind of obviously it's not that high, but just as an example of people born with this kind of mental defect that where they could be violent murderers, then like what did I say, one of them could be one of these people. But if you increase that to 1 million or 100 million or whatever, it's this percentage is going to stay the same, but the number of them is going to increase. So that could be
And
part of
it's
it too.
more people, it's more easy to find a stranger. I mean, back in like the maybe 1800s, you probably would know everybody that you ever knew, within like, the first 5 years of your life. You probably wouldn't travel that much.
Yep.
You basically live in one town and, oh, Mr. Shepherd came to visit, from the other town and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
exactly.
if you were to murder somebody, everyone would immediately know who it was. Like, oh, that was clearly Bradley. He killed that guy. Look at the way he tied those knots.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so yeah, that's but that's kind of, I think it was a confluence of a lot of things, but this seems to be when it caught everybody, like this serial killer fever kind of caught everybody, and that led obviously to a lot of good changes in the way law enforcement handles things like this. But definitely a very interesting to hear Ted Bundy talk about his crimes, to talk about, even if it's in the third person, and to talk about motivations for it. He talks about pornography a lot. Um,
Yeah, I think that was actually a ploy to, get the religious right at the time involved.
I think so too, because I mean,
Because he,
yeah,
he did do like an interview with like one of his last interviews with this James Dobson guy who was like a big like religious like
hmm,
person who liked to blame pornography for everything.
yeah, and as one of the guys points out, there's a lot of people that that have access to pornography and read pornography, and they don't turn into violent murderers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's interesting, I bet he probably was against pornography just because he was like a conservative like Republican at the time, so he
Hmm.
probably was on officially and probably possibly even like legitimately like disgusted by it, but at the same time he's murdering people.
Right. But yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, pornography doesn't cause people to commit murder, just in the same way that video games don't cause people to commit murder. If you're going to commit murder, it's because there's something wrong with your brain. I mean, like
Yeah,
that's just how it is. You have to,
or your thoughts.
yeah, whether it's genetic or environmental or a combination of the two. I suppose there are different causes for different people, but some set of circumstances comes together to create this, and there's certainly no
A lot
one
of them have
cause.
had a lot of them have had like major head trauma, like in their youth.
Yeah, that doesn't
Like I
surprise
think
me.
yeah, which is interesting too because that can affect like your empathy and that those parts of your brain and obviously can have other effects.
Yeah, they mention in the documentary that one of the doctors was, or I think it was a psychologist, thought that it was possible that Ted Bundy had a tumor somewhere in his brain that could be affecting that part of his brain, the empathetic part of his brain.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't. He seemed like he had a pretty traumatic childhood, as another frequent, factoid that comes up in murders and this sort of thing. But I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, you can never really tell. I mean, it's essentially the entire argument of nature versus nurture.
yeah, and it's different. It's different things for different people, I'm sure. And in my opinion, I think there is a genetic. I think you have to be genetically predisposed to this, and there's probably certain environmental factors of how you were raised, patterns of abuse, things like that that can lead to this as well, or that contribute to this as well. To where if you don't meet all the criteria, you probably don't become like this, and obviously serial killing is closely associated with psychopathy and, people who are sociopaths. And it's important to note that there are plenty of people out there who are sociopaths who are not serial killers. There are plenty of people out there who have this particular mental incapacity where they can't feel empathy, but they don't have the violent tendencies to go along with that serial killers do. So they can be manipulative and try to get things for them, selfish, and they can display certain characteristics like that, but not necessarily the violence. So it's a very unique alchemy that makes up a serial killer. Which again is
It
another
takes
reason,
all types, doesn't it?
right? Which again is another reason why they're so fascinating.
Yeah, this. I mean, if there was like a tier of like the most interesting serial killer to one of the least, Ted Bundy is definitely on the higher. The more interesting. I mean, he's like almost like a celebrity of the serial killer genre.
Yeah, and he seems to be like an archetype that people in television and movies and literature use for some of their serial killers.
Yeah, I think what's his The Silence of the Lambs came out in like 1989 or so, so it probably wasn't super long after it was publicly known about Ted Bundy and like what he had done and stuff. And
Right.
one of the characteristics was inspired by him, so he clearly had like grabbed like the zeitgeist of the time so much so that an author would like steal from him. And he's like only done it like 10 years before. He was just like, oh wow, this guy is like so like something about him that was just like the perfect time, as awful as it sounds for that to happen. It was just like captivated like the country's imagination.
Yeah. Yeah, and he got, in certain ways he got what he wanted. Ted Bundy to where if he wanted to be in the limelight, if he wanted attention and things like that, he certainly got it. His trial was televised. He was able to do a good amount of interviews
He
and
married his wife in the courtroom.
I know, crazy. And
As a was that in Florida? I think it must have been in
that
Florida.
was Florida, yeah. And they had a child while he was in
Yeah,
jail.
yeah. It's like it was the most interesting part to me was when they showed when he escaped from Colorado. From the time he escaped in Colorado and went to Florida and went to the Chi Omega house, that was only 16 days. That was insane to me.
Yeah.
I mean, especially since he went to Michigan at that time as well. I mean, that's quite the drive. It's almost like well, I mean, it's not going to take 16 days to drive that far, but he was just like coming apart at that point because he like tried to kill 3 people in the Chi Omega house and then left. And
Yeah.
it was still so worked up. He tried to kill yet another person. That's just like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it had been a while since he'd been able to kill anybody. Um but yeah, I mean it's definitely, if you're interested in this type of stuff, which like I said a lot of people are, including myself and Mike, or at least I know you used to be. I don't know how much you are now, but if you guys are interested in this documentary is definitely worth checking out. It's yeah, I tuned into it kind of expecting most of it to be the tapes and hearing Ted Bundy talk, and like I said, it's not really that. The tapes are kind of a framing device for everything else that happens, but it is a very straight documentary, linearly going through his crimes and his trial and everything, and it's very good. So I definitely recommend it.
I like to find out it was directed by Joe Berlinger, I think his name is.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the two directors who did the Paradise Lost series. The other one actually passed away, I think, a few years ago. But
Okay.
Paradise Lost is like an amazing documentary. If you've never seen that, it's about these three young men who are accused of killing three other young men.
Okay. No, I haven't
It
seen it.
was Yeah, it's really good. It's probably on HBO. I might have actually been an HBO documentary. I could be wrong. It's the first movie that Metallica authorized their music for because the kids were like really big Metallica fans.
Okay.
They put in any piece of shit that came their way. Yeah, he's a really good director. He did a movie that I love that is not a good movie, but it's actually it might have been the other guy, but it was the Blair Witch 2: Book of Shadows.
Oh yeah.
I think he, or maybe it could have been the other guy from the duo that did Paradise Lost, did that as well. It's actually very similar in the intro to Paradise Lost, which is really bizarre in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd recommend that other movie by him. That was very good. And Blair Witch 2: Book of Shadows.
Yeah, I've heard that that's actually a good movie in the fact that it's obviously it's totally different than the Blair Witch, which I kind of appreciate with sequels.
Yeah, it really plays into the mythology of the Blair Witch too, which is actually pretty I just happened to watch this It was like a fake documentary about like the events before the second one came out,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a lot of that stuff is actually or it was before the first one came out. A lot of that stuff is actually taken from that documentary, so it's really good if you're the small mythology of the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, that's cool. But you know, like I said, definitely check out the Ted Bundy tapes on Netflix if you're interested in that. And Ted Bundy was a collector of of sorts.
There we go.
He no,
Oh, I want to say something, but you'll probably have to cut it out.
I don't know if he could put any of the stuff that he wanted to collect on the walls.
You know what he loved to collect most of all?
What's that?
I shouldn't say.
No, say it.
Anyways, collector mode. Is that what you're talking about, Mark?
Yeah, Collector Mount is your premier spot for mounts to mount your collectibles on your wall. Whether we're talking about DVDs, whether we're talking about comic books, whether we're talking about movie cases, Blu-rays, laser discs, whatever it is that Mike's thinking about that Ted Bundy collected. You can mount it up on your wall with Collector Mount. Collector Mount is our sponsor for the month. This is the last episode they're on for now. I have to talk to Bill and see if he wants to continue the arrangement that we have. But go to collectormount.com. Use the code LATEFEE25 to get 25% off your order. And you will be happy with what you get. Mike, I know that you've got your collector mount with the Archie versus Predator comic in there, as frequent listeners
I'm
know.
looking at it right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's glorious, isn't it?
It really is. I should put like some kind of light on it so you could, be forced to avert your attention to it.
But yeah, so Collector Mount is unveiling has unveiled the new movie Blu-ray DVD mount. Go to collectormount.com, enter code LATEFEE25 for 25% off your order, and tell them we sent you. You'll use the code and that'll tell us that we sent you. These mounts are great. They pop your collectibles right off the wall. Only $4.99 for a collector mount, and it gets you in the game. Check out the pictures on the website too, and you will see exactly what this can do, how it can transform any room in your house to a showplace for whatever you like to collect. So collectormount.com, linked below. Go visit them, get a mount, and be happy with that. To wrap up the show this week, figured, and this could be a show all on its own, so we're not going to go into huge detail here. But I see a lot of different podcasts that are movie podcasts have done a movies we're looking forward to in 2019 or stuff like that, and I figured we don't need to do a whole show based on that. But I was going to run through some shows. Any of you who are familiar with Mike's way of thinking now are probably going to know how he's going to respond to most of these. But I'm going to give you, Mike, a list of movies that are coming out in 2019, and we will see what you think of them, or if you have any interest in seeing them at all. And I'll give some of my opinions as well. The first one, we're starting in March. I'm doing this in chronological order. Is called Fighting with My Family. This is, I'm not super familiar with this this movie, but it's directed by Stephen Merchant from the original The Office on British TV. He was in Extras as
Hot
well.
Fuzz?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I like him quite a bit. So he directed this movie. The Rock is in it, and I believe it's basically it's a family of professional wrestlers, and they are working through.
Oh, I saw a preview for this actually.
Okay,
It
but-
looked really bad.
does it?
Yeah.
Well, Stephen Merchant wrote and directed it, so I think
Well, he's a huge wrestling fan, so he brings that to the table.
right. I think he's really funny. I'm hoping that it's not terrible, but I haven't seen the preview for it yet, so we'll see. I'm sure it's not going to make a lot of money. I'll tell you that much, whether it's good or not, because it's not like a heavily advertised film or anything. But
Someone owed Stephen Merchant something.
right. So the next one is Captain Marvel, the next Marvel movie. Mike, I hate to tell you, but we might have to watch this movie.
Nah, I don't think so. Educating Mike, Captain Marvel.
But this is gonna be a big one. Not the biggest one, I don't think, of the year, but this will be a big movie. People are hotly anticipating the Brie Larson led. It's so funny. Brie Larson was in one of my favorite movies. Came out, I think, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, called Room. I think it was 2 years ago, and not The Room, but Room.
Yeah, I heard of that, but didn't she win like an award or something for that?
Yeah, she won Best Actress for that, and she was fantastic in that film. Really good, and now she's in a big-time superhero movie. So I guess she got paid. But
She was in the only thing I've seen her in is 21 Jump Street, the remake with Jonah Hill and
Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's I actually saw it this weekend. I like her in that, but even though I find her likable in in stuff that I watch, I just have no interest in watching any Marvel movies.
The next one is Us. That's I don't know if I had you watch the trailer for that or not, but that's the new Jordan Peele movie.
They had that at the movie Glass. Oh my god, that was a disturbing preview.
Yeah, I think that might actually be like Jordan Peele. Like I said, is I liked Get Out a lot. This one I'm sort of looking forward to. I think this one might be pretty good. Pet Sematary, the remake of the Stephen King one.
I saw a preview for that too, and before it even got anywhere close to saying what it was, I knew it was Pet Sematary.
Yeah. It's funny. I read something a while ago by this guy. I can't remember his name. No one famous or anything. But he wrote online his proposal for the Stephen King cinematic universe. Since all these movies are trying to make cinematic universes, and it was awesome. And anyone,
See, I wouldn't mind that. That sounds interesting, actually.
yeah, anyone that is interested in Stephen King, or anyone that's interested in what I'm talking about, and maybe I'll try to link it below. I'll find it again. But if you look up on Google Stephen King Cinematic Universe, I think his article is probably the first one to pop up. It's long because he goes through all the movies. He goes through all the movies that he would do as far as a cinematic universe, and who he would cast, what the plot would be, how it would connect to other movies. So it's kind of long, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, the big problem, of course, is that most Stephen King movies are really bad.
Well, the biggest problem with it is that most Stephen King properties are owned by several different production companies.
Oh yeah, there is that too.
So I don't think they could ever actually do it. You know, like one of the reasons that Marvel can do their thing is because the MCU is owned by Disney, so it's one studio. I guess if Disney decided to purchase, or some large company like that, maybe Universal or something, decided to purchase the rights to all these different Stephen King properties, maybe they'd be able to do it.
Speaking of rights to Stephen King properties, I read over the weekend that Bryan Singer bought the rights to do Apt People for $1. Thanks, Stephen King.
Yeah. Selling movies to child molesters, allegedly.
I guess the shower scene was a little too realistic for some of the extras.
Oh God. Yeah, that movie. I don't like that movie very much, actually. And obviously,
Yeah,
I don't like Bryan Singer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the movie had potential. I mean, Brad Renfro's a pretty good actor, and wasn't it Ian McKellen who played the other guy?
Yes.
I mean, obviously Ian McKellen's good actor as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it just didn't come together. But yeah. I mean, that's a great idea because there's a lot of Stephen King, stories and stuff that again most of the movies have been very bad. There's a lot of exceptions. Carrie's really good.
Mm-hmm.
The Green Mile obviously is a classic.
But they connect anyway.
The Mangler.
Oh God, the Mangler. One of the worst.
Yeah, there are some references. I mean, obviously Castle Rock. They mentioned different characters, but much like James Bond, the same character is often played by a few different actors.
Yeah, and so like in this cinematic universe, basically he had the Dark Tower be the centerpiece of it, where they would make they'd make a Dark Tower movie. Kind of like they did, which sucked. But anyway, they'd make a Dark Tower movie, and then they'd have a season of a Dark Tower TV show on Netflix that would sort of fill in the blanks. So it was like, and I think he did 3 or 4 Dark Tower movies in his thing. So it was like, Dark Tower movie, then a season of it on Netflix. Then, the next year, another Dark Tower movie. Then the next year, another season of the show. And so that was sort of the centerpiece of it, and everything branched out from that. And there was The Stand, Insomnia. There was a bunch of different of movies. I think The Talisman was part of it.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of those, and I think the Dark Tower especially, work best as books as opposed to TV shows or movies.
Yeah, well, they're making a Dark Tower movie.
Didn't they already do that with Idris Elba?
Or no, I'm sorry. I was thinking of The Stand. They're making The Stand as a cinematic release. They made a TV movie, but yeah, they made the Dark Tower with Idris Elba. A lot of the reason the people didn't like it is because it wasn't like the book at all. Basically, there were
it's one movie, right? And these are like some of the longest books in history.
Yeah, it's 7 books. The series is 7 books long.
7 very big books.
Yeah. So, that obviously it's not what Stephen King fans were hoping for, and it wasn't it wasn't a very well-made movie, so even people that weren't familiar with the Stephen King books didn't like it. So, did not do well. But yeah, so obviously that's not going to happen because the rights issue is just too much to overcome. The next movie is Avengers Endgame, which is the second part of the Avengers movie that came out last year, where everyone was turned to dust.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to do this movie. I mean, half the people are already dead, right?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be in it. I think they're going to focus on, at the end of the original movie, everyone that's left is basically the original Avengers, and then some a few other people. And I think this movie is probably going to be them trying to undo and resurrect all the friends that they lost. I assume time travel or something like that's going to be involved. Maybe alternate dimensions. I don't know exactly how they're going to do this. I will say that the Russo brothers, who started out on Community and Arrested Development and things like that, they are very good at making these movies. So I think they'll probably do a good job and give us a satisfying conclusion.
I bet this one will have CGI in it.
Good call.
Say it now.
The next one, it stars one of our favorite actors. No sarcasm in this one. John Wick 3. Keanu Reeves in John Wick
Oh,
3.
yeah, I saw a preview for that too. I was pretty excited about that.
What's it called? The Perennium?
It's a Parabellum, which is actually the name of the 9 millimeter round is actually 9 millimeter Parabellum.
Yeah,
But in this instance, I think it means prepare for war or something like that.
right. Yeah, I actually read up on that too because I didn't want to look like an idiot talking to you. But I wanted to use that joke about the Perennium.
Perineum.
Yeah.
Oh, that would slip past me, as it often does.
But the next one, I'm kind of looking for like
You didn't mention that you were excited for John Wick 3 as well, which I feel that you should do.
oh, I am excited for John Wick 3. These movies,
Thank you.
this is the way to do an action movie where it's not a bunch of shaky cuts because we can't it looks unrealistic if we film it straight, so we have to make it all shaky cam and cuts so you can barely tell what's happening. This is the way to do an action movie where you take the time to actually choreograph a scene, choreograph fights, and you keep the camera, the camera moves obviously to give that kinetic energy to it, but it stays in frame. We're not doing a bunch of cuts. Keanu Reeves does an excellent job with his fight choreography on this, and as do the generic villains and stunt doubles and everybody else that's involved in it. But this is definitely the way to do action movies, so I am absolutely looking forward to this one.
What I like about these movies is sorry, I don't need to
No, go
take
ahead.
much time on this, but as a huge fan of the genre of action movie, this is a movie that just like has no pretense of a plot. It's like a porn movie that has no plumber or a pizza delivery man. It just gets right to the good stuff.
Right, exactly. It's all money shot in John Wick 3.
And we, the audience, are dripping wet when it's done.
John Wick 3 Perennium, all money shot.
Dripping wet.
Oh god. So this next movie I am sort of looking forward to, even though this is an uneven series. Men in Black 4 International, I believe it's called, because I think that I don't know a lot about this plot, but I think it's sort of a sidequel to the Men in Black series where it's the London office of the Men in Black, I think.
I don't know. I think that Australian Hemsworth,
Chris Hemsworth, yeah.
maybe I think he's in it. Isn't
Yeah. Yeah, it's Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, and I like both of them a lot. They were both in Thor Ragnarok together, and they have really good chemistry in that movie. They're both very funny. So I'm kind of looking forward to this as like a different. It's not going to be one that I rush out to see, but it's a little bit different take, and I think that this could work. The next one, one that my kids I'm sure are looking forward to, is Toy Story 4. I know your kids are not big Pixar fans, right?
No, they're not really. I mean, my oldest one was really into Zootopia for a while. My youngest one never has really been super obsessed with like any like movie or anything like that, like TV series occasionally. But
Yeah, but this one obviously will be, a pretty big film. I'm sure it'll make a lot of money. They're focusing on Bo Peep in this one, finding Bo Peep and bringing her back. It seems like it's Get Woody Laid, the movie.
that's cool. Like, are they gonna do like a Team America kind of thing?
I wish, but yeah. So that's that's Toy Story 4. I
Oh,
don't-
actually, I forgot to mention this. Nick Frost is in that wrestling movie. I saw the preview for it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I remember reading that. And I remember that Stephen Merchant and Nick Frost is what piqued my interest. It's the only reason I put it down on the list of movies that we were going to talk about. But yeah, like I said, I didn't get around to seeing the preview, so I don't know if it sucks. We'll tell you guys. This one, I think this one we're probably both looking forward to. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is the next Quentin Tarantino movie. This is about the Manson family murders.
I'm kind of lukewarm on it. I mean, it's something I'll probably see eventually, but I still haven't seen the what is it, the Eight Unruly Gents or something like that.
Eight
I don't.
guys that don't like things.
Eight guys in a pizza place.
Right.
No, isn't it the Hateful Eight, right?
Yeah, it's the Hateful Eight. The
I've heard-
Ungrateful Eight. That would be a good movie.
I actually thought of some great movies earlier when you were talking about that sitcom you're watching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, I still haven't seen that. I've heard it's good, but isn't it like a 3-hour movie?
I think it's around 2 hours and 2.5 hours, I think, around that.
Yeah, that seems way too long for a Quentin Tarantino movie for me. He tends to when he tends to indulge himself, it gets a little bothersome. Like Kill Bill Volume 2 essentially was like, hey, here's me, I'm Quentin Tarantino, I'm doing Quentin Tarantino.
It's good. It's a good movie. It's definitely two halves. The second half is probably stronger than the third half, or I mean, the second half is probably stronger than the first half of the movie. But I do kind of like how it builds characterization and relationships at the beginning of the film, and they take their time doing it. There are some long shots that don't necessarily need to be in the movie, but they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous shots. It's not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a good one. I think eventually you and I will do a series like we did with Kevin Smith on Quentin Tarantino films, so you can watch it then if you want. But
Yeah, I'll watch it eventually, but it's probably going to be something I'll catch on TV. I'm like, oh, I should have watched that years ago.
but it is good. It's not his best film, but it's a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like I said, I'll probably see this eventually, but I don't think I'll see it at the theater. Like the casting, I don't think it sounds amazing to me.
No, it's Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm trying to remember who else is in it.
No, the Lena Dunham lady's in it.
Yeah.
I don't know what her role is, but there's also this guy who was in Justified. He plays Charles Manson. He was actually really good in Justified, so he might be pretty good.
Oh, it's not Justified though.
It's not, Justified's not in it, I don't think.
Oh, okay, that sucks. But
I think Justified's doing a Deadwood movie. Is that on your little list there, Mark?
no, I didn't put that on there.
I don't know if it's coming out this year.
The next movie is going to be very. Your wife is going to like this one a lot. For those of you listeners who don't know, I don't think we've ever mentioned it before. Mike's wife is my cousin, and Mike and I have known each other since what, 6th grade, something like that.
Yeah, I think 6th grade.
So Mike's wife and I grew up together, being cousins. But the next movie on the list is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh yeah, I was actually talking to my daughter about that earlier because she had her copy of it, on the floor. Because why would you want to put it in a bookshelf? and I told her I can't. I could have sworn I read isn't Guillermo del Toro doing this?
Yes, he's directing it.
Yeah. So that's actually going to be very creepy and probably very good.
Yeah, that's my thought on it too. When I saw that he was directing it, I said, okay, well this is gonna get a little off the wall too. Then, but
yeah, I mean, unless
I'm
there's some Fishman in the story, then I might have to turn it off.
It's been a long time since I've seen an anthology movie, and I assume that this is that it's going to be. That it's going to be a series of stories.
Yeah, I would hope so. Well, we saw the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. That wasn't too long ago.
That's true. That is an anthology story. But yeah, sort of like that. I think that's kind of what this is. This is going to be, and it might have a wraparound, story, a framing device story that a lot of them do.
I mean, I can only expect nothing but the best from this movie. When's it coming out? You said May or something?
This one is coming out, I think, in June.
Oh,
or no,
yeah, I don't know.
this one's October.
Okay, yeah. So why would you not release that in October? I mean, that would be the only flaw with the idea of this movie.
Yeah, October's a little stuffed with movies because that's when Once Upon a Time in Hollywood comes out, then Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and then It Chapter 2.
Oh, yeah. Are you looking forward to it, Chapter Two?
Not really. My wife is, for some reason, even though after we watched the first It movie, she was like, it wasn't that good. But she's still looking forward to the second one for
Yeah,
some reason.
I felt that the first It movie like adhered to the book a lot better. I mean, aside from that, that gangbang part.
Right.
I mean, the TV movie was a weird movie. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know. I mean, obviously Tim Curry was great in it, but I don't think it was
That
the
movie doesn't
best
hold up.
version. No, it really doesn't.
And the
But yeah,
worst part of it is the adult stuff.
yeah. So I thought in Chapter One. I mean, the kids were pretty good actors and that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's hard to watch the movie when you're just thinking of Tim Curry's version of Pennywise the whole time.
Yeah,
And then, of course,
Tim
you have all
Curry's
the
the good thing about that original one, yeah.
Yeah, and possibly the only good. I mean, again, it's really weird. Seth Green is in that movie, but he's. I
Yeah.
think I mentioned this before, but he's like 15 and everybody else is like 10, and he's like the same height as them, but he looks a lot older. It's
Yep.
really weird. Jonathan Brandis was in it.
Oh,
Yeah,
rest
it
in
was
peace.
just. I thought there was somebody else who was like who grew up to be like a famous actor. Wasn't the one who played? No, I think that is. I think that's Seth Green. I'm thinking of. I mean, it was okay. I mean, I thought it one was all right, but I'm not. I don't even know if I'll see it two in theaters. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, I know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to how much of like the especially weird parts like the turtle and all that stuff
Hmm.
from the novel even because I mean they tried to do the Deadlights thing and the TV adaptation. It just came out of left field. It just made no sense at all.
Yep. Yeah, the first one was okay. It wasn't that scary to me. That um the thing that I didn't like about the first one is, and this is, and my wife and my mother-in-law watched it with me, and we all watched it together, and they said that we were lucky we had you here because they don't do a lot of explaining, which I mean can be good in a certain ways, but there were a lot of things that are from the book. Like you said, they're pretty
Yeah,
good.
there's
They're pretty good about following the book stuff, but there's some stuff that's in the movie from the book that's not explained at all. And we watched it on DVD, and I had to pause it a few times, and I explained to him in the book this is what happens, and this is why they're saying this, and this is why this is going on right now. And they're like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense then."
yeah, I never even considered that because I read the book obviously and it just I would have loved it if they would have started exactly how they start off the first or how they start off the book. With like the guy in '85 like
Yep.
being thrown off I mean, just to be completely true to form, that would be probably a much longer movie, but that would be pretty interesting. And then
Yeah.
if you have it like super long, then like the dead lights and the turtle and the beams and all that shit, actually makes sense as opposed to look, there's lights traveling through the sewers now. It's like what are you doing here?
Right.
I would just exclude those elements entirely from the movie if it's going to be that short.
Yeah. I mean, I will see it chapter 2, but like you, I don't think I'll see it in the theater. I think I'll wait till it comes out on streaming and stuff like that. But I like the
So
cast.
yeah, it wasn't Scott McAvoy. Scott McAvoy. I don't think it's his name.
James.
James McAvoy. What's her name? That
Jessica Chastain. Yeah.
I don't know who else is in it. John Ritter. Probably not gonna
Bill
be
Hader's
in
in
this
it.
one. Who is he? Is he Richie or?
I think he's Richie, yeah.
It might be all right. But I mean, I'm probably still not gonna go out to the theater to see it.
No, I won't go out to the theater to see it either, but I will see it eventually. But yeah, I'm sure they'll do a fine job with it, but I'm not, this is not one that I'm super anticipating.
No, I just hope they do the right thing and just completely ignore the book fans and go straight for the theater, the movie fans, because that's really who they're making this for.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said a lot of stuff comes out in October. What else is coming out in October?
The Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix and the Todd Phillips directed one. It seems so weird.
See, I think this might be an interesting movie. It's going to be one that's either going to be really good or just like a complete mess.
Yeah, I could see it being a mess.
Joaquin Phoenix is a good actor, and I mean, no one thought before they actually saw the Dark Knight that like everyone thought Heath Ledger was the Joker. That's a terrible choice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Todd Phillips. I mean, he's mostly I don't know that I've ever seen any non-comedies done by him. I mean, he's a good director, though. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I want to see what happens, but again, I'm not going to go to the theater.
I saw that G.G. Allen movie that he did.
Oh yeah, I heard of it. I have no interest in watching it though. G.G. Allen just doesn't interest me.
No, me either. But then we go into December of this year, and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Tom Hanks led Mr. Rogers movie, which is getting a lot of buzz. Obviously, I'm sure that'll be an Oscar contending movie because one, it's Tom Hanks, and two, everyone loves Mr. Rogers.
Is Tom Hanks just like doing like biopics of like old people that provided happiness for millions at this point?
Apparently, I guess. Uh, and
Yeah,
then
I'm obviously not going to see that. I mean, it's a mention that we all know this.
I'll probably see it eventually, but I'm not going to see it in the theater.
Yeah, for Mr. Rogers, I mean, what doesn't really interest me that much. He had a weird show. I don't really care for that much.
The Terminator is the next movie that comes out in December. This is the one where James Cameron has the rights to the Terminator back, and it's a sequel. It's a direct sequel to Terminator 2. So Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 are in continuity in this universe. The Sarah Connor Chronicles TV show and all the other movies are not written out, but they're explained away as happening in an alternate timeline. So this is a
Yeah.
direct sequel to Terminator 2.
Okay. And, Arnold is way too old for this movie.
Yeah,
How are they going to explain this? I mean, he's this Terminator that was melted in the fire, but now he aged. Like obviously he's going to be an older person.
yeah. Yeah, I don't. They might use that de-aging thing. Who knows?
I mean, they do mention that the biological flesh, in theory, ages, but they all just die so quickly. But he literally lowered himself into a pit of molten hot lava. They
Yeah,
drove to a lava factory off the highway, and he just dunked himself in there.
yeah. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to explain it. I know Linda Hamilton's back.
I think that's interesting because isn't he divorced from Linda Hamilton?
Yes.
Rare.
So there's that one, and then I think Avengers Endgame will probably be the biggest hit as far as the movie that makes the most money, but this will probably contend with it. The last movie, around Christmas time, December 2019, Star Wars Episode 9.
Oh yeah, I mean, Toy Story is also coming out. I mean, it's going to be hard to say which one's going to be the most successful.
Yeah, and they're all Disney properties. All the biggest movies are all Disney properties.
Oh yeah, I forgot that they own the Marvel or whatever.
Yeah,
Good for them.
they own Lucasfilm, Marvel, and obviously Pixar. But yeah, Disney is going to absolutely destroy the box office this year. I'm actually interested to see how much they make combined.
So look at Disney stock prices, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because they are going to destroy this year. But yeah, I'm not super it's funny because I'm not looking forward to a lot of movies this year. But I think I'm jaded on watching movies. But I'm not looking forward too much to Star Wars Episode 9. It's one I'll see for sure. And it's one we'll talk about.
How it goes.
I'm sure. But the last one, it just kind of the way it ended. I don't know. I didn't love it. But yeah, so that one will definitely be big, and yeah, like you said, I think probably Avengers and Toy Story 4 and Star Wars will compete. The one big movie I didn't mention, I forgot to mention, that comes out in the summer, that's not necessarily a Marvel movie. I mean, it kind of is and it kind of isn't. Is that Spider-Man: Far From Home movie? That's Sony.
What's that? Is a sequel to the other Spider-Man one?
Yeah.
Was that guy in the? I thought didn't they just come out with like a Spider-Man like cartoon or something?
Yes, Into the Spider-Verse. That's like I hear it's very good. That's That's a
Yeah, I heard it was good, too.
multiverse one where it's a bunch of different iterations of Spider-Man. They have the Miles Morales Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and they have Spider-Ham in there too. And I can't remember the other one.
You want to hear something insane? I just looked this up. Disney's a $165 billion dollar company. Netflix is at 146 billion. That's insane that Netflix is so close in value to Disney.
No kidding. God, that's insane. Netflix is going to buy, or Disney's going to buy Netflix next.
I know they're rolling out their own streaming service, and that's what the article is mostly talking about, because I was trying to find out how much stock was for Disney.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just like, I'm surprised they're that close, because Netflix has been around less than 20 years for sure. So
Yep.
Good for them.
Yep. Well, I don't hold any ill will towards them because they provide us with good entertainment too. So I like what they do. I like their price. So go and make your money.
Yeah, good for both of them.
But that is our show for this week. As always, the best thing that you can do for us is to tell a friend about the show. Force it into any conversation that you can find. Oh, I'm sorry that you had this miscarriage. You know what always cheers me up? Is massive late fee.
That's exactly how you want to do it.
Yeah, broach every subject talking about this show. No, but seriously.
Ooh, full blown, huh? Speaking of a massive amount of the cellular structure in your body, I know your T cells might not be massive, but sometimes late fees are.
Oh my god!
Probably don't do that one.
Oh wow! Oh man! But yeah, tell a friend about massive late fee, and if you want to donate to us, you can go to Patreon, donate $1 to or more if you want, but $1's good, to our Patreon, patreon.com/massive late fee. That'll be linked below. You can email the show, massivelatefee@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter and Facebook at Massive Late Fee. Bandcamp, our audio commentaries, massivelatefee.bandcamp.com. And I think that's about it, right?
Don't forget late_Mike on Twitter. I found the password and I am able to access the account.
Awesome.
And anyone listening, why don't you tweet me an example of a way you worked Massive Late Fee into a conversation that had nothing to do with it.
There you go. Yeah, maybe the next contest we will have. This is a good idea for a contest. We'll do a contest where the most creative way that you can work our show, listening to our show, into a conversation, and most creative one wins.
Massive Late Fee. Yeah, work it in.
I might set that up where we have another contest with that. That's a good idea. But that is the show for this week. We will see you next week, hopefully with the Skeptical Skeptics. Have a good week, everybody. See you. Bye.
See you later.